Now, chapter 10 is pretty interesting. There's actually, to me, it's like it could be divided into two different chapters. So the first three sections in chapter 10 are actually talk about things that are kind of related to what we learned in chapter 9 with inheritance. The next two topics are sorting and searching, which is more like a data structures type stuff. Now, we're gonna ignore sorting and searching for now. I will make another lecture and talk about that. But I want to kind of just hit chapters 10, polymorphism, because that's actually stuff that we should know as part of the concept of understanding the whole idea behind chapter 9. So, like I did in chapter 9, I'm not going to read all the slides. I'm just going to kind of thumb through them and pick out the things that I think are important. So off this first slide is binding. Now, what binding actually is the way that methods are invoked. So if methods were bound at compile time in Java, then the same method would be invoked every time we invoked a method. Now, Java actually defers binding until runtime. That's called dynamic binding or late binding. And that's when Java determines what method of that object reference to actually invoke. So that's what kind of leads us to have polymorphism, is we can have an object, say our movie object. Our movie object can be media, right, because it inherits from the media class. Or book can be a book or can be media because it also inherits from the media class. Or the book can be an interface that it implements. Let's just say we implemented the comparable interface. The book can be referenced as comparable, or it can be referenced as another interface that we implement on it. Now, polymorphism, the term literally means having many forms. Okay, so that's the whole idea. You're going to hear programmers throw around the term polymorphism, and that just means that an object can be different types of things, right? It doesn't have to be whatever object it was declared to be. It can also be referred to as the object that it inherited from, or an object that, or an interface that it implements. And if you read through the slides, polymorphism via inheritance. Now, this is the idea of actually referencing a child class, but using a parent object reference variable. I'll do an example of this. So here they give you the holiday and Christmas. So they make a holiday object reference variable and they store a Christmas object in it. Okay, you treat the Christmas object just like you would a holiday object. It will still have its Christmas methods on it, but you would have to cast it to a Christmas object in order to use the Christmas methods on it. But if you use methods you can use all the methods on holiday, but if you use methods on the holiday that the Christmas class overrides, then it's actually going to use the overridden version on the Christmas class, if that makes sense. I'll do an example of that. Hopefully we'll clear some things up. Let's see what else it says. They give an example of celebrate. If you remember from the chapter 9 demo that we did, we have that location method with the location of where something is located within the store. Polymorphism versus inheritance. I'm just going to read this slide. I don't really know. We're just trying to get at here. Note that the compiler restricts invocations based on type of reference. So if Christmas had a method called getTree and holiday didn't have, the following would throw a compiler. Okay, so they're just saying, like, this is what I'm talking about, where if you put a Christmas object into a holiday object reference variable, you can't call getTree unless you cast it to be a tree like they did here. Because even though it is a tree object, it doesn't know that it has the tree methods, if that makes sense. Okay, so that they give you some examples here. You can kind of go through that, but let me just do my own example so you can kind of clear up what we just talked about. These sections are actually pretty short. So let me just get back up to the top here, and I want to make sure I didn't really miss anything. Yeah, I mean, this is a very good chapter, but I'm just going to go ahead and hop into the examples. So what I did was I made a new project called Chapter 10 Polymorphism Demo. I went ahead and took everything that we had from Chapter 9, like the last date I left it in, but I did some cleanup. Like, one of the things I did is I removed all the abstract stuff so that we can instantiate an object of media. Now, if you remember, we had this method called location. on movie, we had this method called location, where it basically overrode the location on the parent class. Book also extends media, but it doesn't have a location method. And here's our driver. I'm going to go ahead and just comment out everything that we have under here, and let's just talk about what we just went over and checked the lecture slides. So what they're referring to is, if I have a media object, okay, I'm saying this is media, and we'll just say like media 1. But instead of putting an actual media object, I put a movie object. Okay. Then this is fine with Java. As you can see, like IntelliJ normally gives you a red line if you're doing something wrong. This is okay with Java because it knows that a movie can be a media, right? Because it is a media. I could do the same thing with book. Let me just copy what I did here. All right, so I did the same thing with book, okay? So this is kind of like a polymorphic reference where I have a media object reference variable, but I'm putting in a movie and a book. Now Java does not know, for some reason, that media 1 is a movie. So I can't come over here and invoke movie type methods on it, like methods that are specific to a movie, like get director. Okay, IntelliJ is like upset at me. If I wanted to invoke those methods, I would have to know that media 1 is a movie object and cast it to a movie in order to invoke those methods. So I'd have to come over here and cast it to a movie. And now Java's okay with me invoking get director. So I'm going to go ahead and slap that to the print console. And need one more parentheses. All right, I'm going to go ahead and run this. Okay, you can see that I was able to get the director of that movie. Now, media 1 is being treated like a media object, but it's actually pointing to a movie object in memory. Okay, so another interesting question would be, what would actually happen if I were to invoke the location method? Now, if I did this on media 2, media 2 is a book, so media 2.location. So if we go to the book, you can see I don't actually override the location method. So this one's gonna be pretty obvious. You're gonna override it. So it's gonna use the actual location method from media. So if I hop back over to my driver, but what happens if I do this on media 1, which is a movie, and movie does have location overridden. If I were to run this, you'll see it's actually going to use the location method from the movie class because it's still a object, it's still a movie object in memory. So it's going to use that method for that object because that's what it is in memory. But I'm still treating it like media, meaning it doesn't know anything about the movie methods unless I cast it to a movie. So this is what we call polymorphism. Now the benefit of this is if I have a movie and I have a book, two different objects, right? Because these are two different objects, I have to put them in their own arrays. But if I treat them as movies, or excuse me, as media types, I can make a list here called list, and say my list holds media, and we'll call this media list is equal to new array list. And I just need to import all of this. Come on, and import this as well. Okay, and now I can just slap these into, I'll do this over here. I can say media list. I can add media 1, can add media too. Okay, so because I have a book and a movie, if I'm treating them as a media, Java sees them as the same object type. I can just put them into this list, and then if I needed to iterate through that list, I can do something like media inside of media list. And then I can just do a system.println and just say media kit title. And maybe, maybe before the for loop, I could just say something like system println media for rent. All right, when I run this, you can see that it's going to print all the titles for the book and for that movie, right here. Now I'm treating them as media. In memory, they're a book and a movie, but in the programming, they're considered media. So Java only knows of methods specific to that media. But it's interesting because if I do things like a print line, or excuse me, invoke the toString, it's going to call the toString of the book or the movie class because I overrode those toString methods. Run it again, and you can see that that's my toString for my movie, and here's my toString for my book. Pretty interesting, to say the least, right? So that movie and that book, those are movies and book objects in memory, but I'm using a media object reference variable to point to them in memory. Now the next section, it talks about polymorphism through interfaces. Let me just kind of go through that really quick. It should be just as simple. I think they give you like a interface of speaking. Okay, it's the same thing. There's only a few slides. You should probably read through it. Okay, so we can have polymorphism through inheritance, like I just did with media, or you can have polymorphism through interfaces. So that means I would have to make an interface. If both book and media implement those interfaces, then I'll be able to treat them as that type of interface. So I'm going to go and just make an interface really quick. Inside source, I'm gonna right click, new. I don't have an option for interface. I thought there was. Okay, oh, there it is. Click interface, and I'm just going to say rent. Dang. Okay, well, we'll just call it like rentable, maybe a rentable interface. All right, and press enter. Okay, so in my rentable, is that spelled right? Rentable, I don't know. All right, so I'm gonna have a method to, let's see, to rent, or maybe is available, is rented, I don't know. All right, so I'm gonna have a method called void rent, and you can pass in a integer, and it'll be like the number of days. And then I'll have one return to Boolean called, actually another one called void return. Dang, you can't use return because it's a reserved word. Dang it. All right, return media. Dang it, this is where I could really use the class to give me some ideas. I have rent, and then we have return. All right, I'm just going to go with media. And for consistency, I'll just call this media. All right, so return movie. So return media. So you have rent, we have return, and then we'll just have like a method that says is rented. Okay, so 3 methods. I don't know why I put so much effort into that. I could have just got away with using one, but I'm gonna hop over to movie, and I'm gonna say movie is now going to implement rentable. All right, I'm gonna hover over this, implement methods, hit OK, and now I'm gonna have book, and book is also going to implement rentable. And man, the more I think about this, the more I feel like these should actually just be done on the media class, because all my media is going to be rentable. So just for good programming practice, I'm not going to implement the rentable interface on movie or on the book. I'm going to do it on the parent class. All right, so I'm going to go to the parent class, and the children will inherit from the parent class, so it's also going to inherit its interfaces that it implements. Oh, shoot. Okay, implement, and then we're going to say rentable. It should be red. So there's a few things I'm going to have to do now. Is I'm going to have to, just like the lockable, I have to make a variable to kind of control if it's rented or not. I'm just going to make one called is rented, or maybe just rented. And inner constructor, set that equal to false. All right, so whenever you return a number of days, I should probably use a number of days for when it's available, right? Have like availability variable or something, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just gonna check to see if it's not rented, then we'll mark it. Oops. We'll mark rented as true, and return movie. I guess do I really need to check this? Do like a check here. I guess if you return it, like if you're bringing it into the store. We'll just, for now, I'm just gonna say rented is equal to false. Okay, and then is rented is gonna return whether it's rented or not. All right, so now that my media class implements the rentable, that means that I can treat my book and my movie as a rentable, meaning before I was doing all this with media. I'm gonna go ahead and just count this out. Okay, count that out. Now I'm gonna make what we call rentable reference variables. I'm gonna say rentable here and rentable there. Now Java is okay with this because it knows that movie and book both inherit from the media class, and the media class implements the rentable interface. So I'm gonna call this one, like, I don't know, rentable 1 and rentable 2. Now what's interesting about this, same way that we had with the movie, is that they're still whatever they are underneath, meaning this rentable object reference variable is pointing to a movie, right? Rentable 1 is pointing to a movie in memory, and rentable 2 is pointing to a book in memory. So that method right there is going to work once I fix that reference variable. Oh shoot. Once I fix this reference variable, this call right here is going to work. If I run it, you can see that it still knows that George Lucas is the director of that movie, even though I referenced it as a rentable. This is what we call polymorphism. I know it's kind of crazy. I made a reference variable to hold a rentable, but I put a movie in memory. If I know there's a movie there, I can still treat it as a memory, or excuse me, as a movie. Okay, but these are both rentables. So if I were to make a list that holds rentable object reference variables, let's say move for media for rent. I could do something like okay, and then I can just say rentable inside of media for rent. Okay, now what's interesting here is that I can't really, I mean, I can still invoke the toString here, and the toString will reference whatever it is in memory, meaning if it's a movie, it's going to call the toString for movie. If it's a book, it's going to call the toString for book. Okay, so wait, what the heck? Oh, I didn't add anything. I'm sorry. Media for rent, add rentable 1. Media for rent, add rentable 2. All right, so let me run this again. All right, so you can see that it still knows what it is in memory, right? Treating it as rentable. But the things that we can do in rentable is we can just do things like invoke. We can rent the media, right, for like 7 days, each one, and then print out whether it's rented or not. That's not really going to do anything for us right now because we have no visibility in that, but we can do something like, let's see, system out, print line, you can say like, is rented. And then I can run it. It should be false. I can run it. You can see it'll be true after I call rent media. All right, and there you go, right? False, true. Pretty amazing stuff. Okay, so I'm treating those objects as rentables now. Now, it doesn't know it's a movie unless we cast it to a movie. It doesn't know if it's a media unless we cast it to a media. It doesn't know if it's a book unless we cast it to a book. Now, what's interesting though is I made these rentable classes. Excuse me, the rentable object reference variable. I can only use them as rentables, but since the parent class implements rentable, I can still invoke rentable on the parent media because it knows that it's also rentable. So if I were to make, let me hop back over here. So if I came over here and I tried to invoke the method rentable dot get title, right? It's going to be upset at me because it only sees it as rentable, but I can still, if I were to make this media instead of rentable, I would have to make this array list media as well, and this media. Okay, I'll be able to invoke the rentable and the media methods without any problems because Java knows that if something is a media, it's going to implement the rentable. So depending on the type of object reference variable that you use, that's what's going to determine what you can actually reference when you use that reference variable. So if I were to run this, everything works. I'll get the title. I'll be able to use the rentable methods. You can see here, there's the Star Wars, there's the Java Software Solutions. So this is what we call polymorphism. It's just you have an object in memory. It's some type of object, but if it's using some interfaces, you can use that a reference variable for that particular interface. You can use a parent reference variable for that type of interface. See what else? You can just kind of put them all into the same container and then like just treat them as that particular type. So one more thing before I stop this video is say we have a string and I just call this one name. and I say the name is Michael. Okay, now a string and a media don't have anything in common. Most people would think. Correct? Correct. All right, so just to say, I came over here and I made a list, and I called, the list is going to just hold object types. And I'm just going to say this is an objects list. It's going to be equal to a new array list that holds objects. All right, so what I can do is I can take my object list and I can just add printable 1. I can add printable 2. I can add my name. Okay, so that's what is interesting, is because I made a list that holds the most generic type of object, I can put any type of object into this list, right? Because everything inherits from the object class. So if I were to make a for loop, I'll come down on here and do something like this. So to say system out, print line, I'll call some like new line characters, and I'll just say like object list. And I'll say for object obj inside of objects, and I'll just say call object.toString, because remember the toString is actually on the object class. I don't necessarily have to invoke toString because it's automatically invoked whenever I pass the object to the console. So I can get rid of this and it's still going to invoke. But when I run this, you'll see that I have a book, I have a book, a movie, and a normal string inside of I don't know what just happened. What the heck? Interesting. I have no idea. Like, I ran it and my computer messed up. Okay, so I'm running this again. You can see I have a movie, I have a book, and I have a normal string inside of one list because I treat it as the most generic type. Now that is what we call polymorphism. Is an object can be many things. All right, so that is it for the first part of chapter 10. The sorting and searching, I will make another video of it, hopefully in a couple of days, and do some examples. This is more like of a data structures type thing, but really, I mean, we're kind of almost done here. I mean, we have finished up chapter 10. I'm going to give you chapter 11 to do on your own. And then chapter 12 is recursion. Chapter 13, I forgot what it is, but I don't really think there's a lot of good information from it. But maybe, I don't know. I'll see if there's anything in there and see what I can pull out of it. Okay, so that is it.